And as always, we're going to be looking for accurate context, good risk management, and always exercising good patience.
Everybody who's traded has gone through periods of time where their strategy hasn't worked.
Where if not a hard stop, you should reevaluate the trades you're in based on time.
That's what we're here for, is to put ourselves in the best success. A trading routine does that, builds that habit, lets you know what to work on, what to reflect on, and what to improve on the next day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Coach's Playbook on Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. I'm back. Hoag's back. Mick's back. Dan's back. How you guys doing today? Dan, you always complain that I never go to you first. How you doing?
I'm good, Jack. I don't complain much anymore. JD went first with me last week while you were gone.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, it's great to be back. And especially for today's topic, we are talking about something that Mick brought up, actually, which is we hear a lot of people asking about micro futures and mini futures and sort of how they can be incorporated into your trading plan as far as scaling in and out and how that affects the business of your trading, because there is no free lunch here, as you will soon see. But first, Mick, I understand you have a shout out for us.
I do. Really happy about this shout out. I roulette it up $3,855 trading the NASDAQ today. So, it's a pretty good day.
Yeah. I presume he's taking it short.
Yeah,
exactly. Dan, we're back below the Mendoza line on the S&P 500, back below 4,000. But so be it. So, Mick, you suggested this topic today, so maybe you can kind of get us started on what.
Well, let's remember who suggested the topic, Jack.
Oh, I confuse you guys in your Slack messages. All right, Dan, shoot.
I'll let Mick go first, though.
Well, I'm not going to fight anybody over it.
I'll just sit here and be quiet.
We can do it. Yes, you be quiet, John. I guess I'll go if that's all right, Dan. I don't have a whole lot to share, but I know, these micros and minis contracts, there's this thing called fungibility where, I think we all know that one mini contract is equal to 10 micros contracts of the same product. So one ES mini is this carrying the same contract specifications or size of 10 ES micros. There's a thing called fungibility where if I were to buy one ES mini contract, I could go in and I could sell 10 micro contracts and I would have a net position of 0. I'd be flat basically because they're fungible. So the minis are 1/10 the size. Now, what I had brought up is that, we get a lot of traders that are saying that they want to be able to trade more micro contracts. And I understand that. I mean, I do think, psychologically, it can be fun to swing around a large amount of size when it comes to your position. So just want to point one thing out, though, if we're talking about the 150K combine or 150K funded account, you can trade up to 15 contracts via the scaling plan. Now, if you were going to trade those 15 contracts equal size, it would basically correspond to 150 micros contracts. So people like scaling in, scaling out. What I want to point out, though, is when you do have your account balance to a certain size, you're probably going to want to go with the mini contracts versus the micros contracts, just because the cost of doing business with the exchange fees and commissions is significantly lower to trade one ES contract, the mini contract, compared to 10 micro contracts. Dan and I were just doing the math right before we hopped on here. To trade one ES mini with one of our brokerage firms in the live account, it's $4.36. Whereas one micro contract, it's $1.32. So you'd have to trade do the math. $1.32 times 10 comes out to $13.20 over $13 basically. I'll just do quick napkin math here. We're live, so I don't want to stumble over numbers. So it costs you $13
by 10. That's some hard stuff.
Yeah, it costs you $13. I'm looking at all your faces making fun of me now. It costs you $13 to do 10 micros. compared to just over $4 to do the minis. So we're talking a $6 difference, for one e-mini versus 10 micros. So you start talking about doing 15 minis versus 150 micros, then do the math. If you're treating this as a business, that's not where you want to be. The beauty about futures is we get to trade leverage here, and we don't have to put up a ton of money to trade that leverage. But when you start talking about, doing a lot of micros contracts, you're really cutting into your bottom line quite a bit just with fees and commissions. And this is stuff you've got to be very conscious of, especially if you're extremely active during the day, scaling in and out, long, short, scalping kind of thing.
Let me preface this by, I think we're on the same page. We are not anti-micro. We really like the micro contracts, but like whatever you trade as far as size is going to decide the product, just as if you were doing, options or something else. People that trade a ton of money are going to trade the SPX, not the SPY, just because it's a larger unit. Micros make the most sense when you are trying to trade a fraction of a contract, maybe up to, 15 micros or something like that. And I get that you want that precision, right? You want to be able to control exactly your exposure, but that increasingly makes less sense if you have a maximum of, say, like you're someone that trades the equivalent of 3 to 5 minis. I'm not sure you need 50 increments of that 5 contracts to get what you have on. 20% of your size at each level you're scaling in, I would think would be enough for what we're doing here. But Hogue, sorry, I froze for a second there. Hogue, what do you think about that as far as like precision goes and what you would be trading?
Well, we used to have only the big S&P, and I forget when they split the contract, but one point in the big S&P was $500. Then they split the contract. Then 1 point in the S&P was $250. Then they came up with the E-minis, which of course was advertised as another way to, kind of finely tune your hedges to be much closer to a true hedge. And now we've got the micros. So they keep making the unit smaller, but it's making the actual transaction costs a lot higher. Now, I never traded micros. I started using micros when we started using them for make Hogue money. And in make Hogue money, we're basically trading from point A to point B. We're not overly complicated with acquiring inventories and scaling out of opportunities. We don't have the time or really the bandwidth to do that in that regard. What occurs to me about the micros is it's a great entry tool to really start to feel actual risk. But it's nothing that you want to, I don't think, fall in love with. The minute you start being able to point A to point B trade 10 micros, you should be trading minis, because it's going to cost you a lot more. Another thing is, if you are going to try and scalp the micros, it's going to eat up anything you can make trying to scalp with those commissions. So to trade the micros, I think you've got to be looking certainly into a longer time frame for your trades. If you're just trading for a couple of ticks, you're going to be trading to cover commissions in that regard. So I like the micros. I do. I like them a lot. Again, it's kind of a entry level, real risk feeling trading the micros. But if you're successful and you're building your account, you're going to build yourself out of those micros. And I certainly don't suggest trying to trade 150 micros instead of a 15 lot mini opportunity. It's just going to cost you more and more.
Also, it's unlikely that most of y'all out there who are listening to this are trading 15 contracts to begin with. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
We've done the math before. Doesn't that be like $3 million exposure in the S&P?
That was quick napkin math there, Jack.
Well, because we're right at 4,000, man. That's
Thanks,
that's what I do.
Thanks, Dan.
Stirring the pot.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just catching shots over here. Shots fired.
hey, we still love you, Mick. But that is, granted, you're allowed to do that in the biggest account. But yeah, at that point, definitely you want to be trading something with a higher unit size. Like a lot of people, as Hogue mentioned, talk about the short-term strategies. We're not the biggest maybe proponents of scalping strategies here, but if you're going to go down that road, then I think between just the commissions and liquidity, you got to go with the e-minis at that point. Yeah, I can't, I do get it. Like, I do get wanting to scale in and out, and I do get the idea of having, more customization. But I think at the end of the day, it's the fees are just going to eat you up on that. So yeah, I think that is kind of our feeling on the micros. Is there any other things here, Dan, that you would like to discuss?
Well, yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit.
That's what you get
Oh,
for throwing
geez.
shots, firing shots, Dan.
Okay, thanks, ladies and
Completely
gentlemen.
overlooked. Yeah, this was an excellent segment, everybody. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Dan, if you don't mind, I'm going to give the quote right now, and then we're going to hang up.
No, I mean, I like micros. I think they're a phenomenal product out there for traders, especially new traders getting into this, right? We talk about it a lot. You want to have a little bit of skin in the game, but you want to be involved. And there's a really good opportunity for micros. And it's been touched on, you can grow your account out of micros. So if you're going to be a micros trader, you got to really understand what your actual long-term what your goals are when you're trading micros. For perspective, Mick touched on it. It's 1/10 of a mini. If you're trading to make 100 or 200 a day, but you have a relatively decent account size, well, if it's 1/10 and you're pretty consistent at that $100 to $200 a day, then maybe you can think about the minis, and then you're closer to the $1,000, $2,000 a day. You can really start to grow those accounts. What I do really want to touch on, because I know it's a common thing, and a lot of traders, they like the micros right now because they can talk about trading size. I have 15 on, I got 20 on, I've got 10 on. That's fun. But when you start to grow that, number one, if you're trying to equate 15 e-minis to micros, and we're talking these 150 contracts, there's people that get paid very big money to be able to fill 150 contracts at a decent price, because the liquidity is not going to be there. We're not sitting 1,000 deep like we're trading bonds. We're sitting, 30, maybe 40 deep on the bid and offer, and then it thins out from there. So getting your fills is going to be a little bit tougher, and you actually have to start working your orders, because they're going to hit you on 5, and maybe the market will keep moving, and you got to fill another 5, and then you're starting to work it, and then you're getting a worse fill because the market's now going against you a little bit, and you're trying to chase that market to get to that fill you really want. So there's a lot of things to think about. Now, Jack mentioned it. I will say it again. I think they're a phenomenal product for new traders, for people trying to get into this, maybe working on new strategies, and you want to take that little bit of risk because it changes that emotional side of the game for you. So you do want to get involved, but you want to kind of manage that risk a little bit. Some great opportunities. But once you start wanting to do some more size, really think through the benefits, the pros and the cons. I think there definitely are pros, no doubt about it. Limited risk. You can kind of control and customize a little better. But the cons are your costs are super highly increased. When you start getting a little bit more size, getting those fills, things are going to be a little bit more difficult. So those are the things that you want to think about. And again, I love them. I think they're a great product. And you can always do other things with it. You can kind of adjust. You can say, you know what, I'm short one NASDAQ, but I want to maybe think about a hedge. I'm going to buy 2 S&P micros, and you can make some adjustments there, and you can use them into a strategy. But again, when your costs are going to be $13.20 to trade 10 versus $4.32 to trade 1 mini, that's what we got to think about. This is a business, right? And we always got to think about what's the cost, what's the reward in any sort of business venture we make, and minis can get pretty pricey.
And also, for the love of God, please do not equate your self-worth with the number of nominal lots that you trade in futures trading. That is some 40K millionaire ideation right there.
Yeah.
Right, Mick?
Well said, Jack. I mean, as we're talking about this, I have something that I want to say, and it's extremely blunt. if I ever went up to someone and said, oh yeah, I've got, 40 micros on or something, there isn't a professional in the industry that would say, well, why don't you just have 4 minis on? I understand, psychologically the concept of wanting to swing around the size, but it's not the smartest thing. Like, Dan said, loves the micros. I think they're good for, I was writing down, I've got a list of 4 things. One, learning how to hold like positions for a longer period of time, holding stuff overnight. You don't have that leverage on, so it's a good segue into, becoming more familiar and comfortable with holding stuff overnight. The other, so like, position trading, basically, that's one thing. Learning to trade on a higher time frame, which is similar to position trading. Like we always try and tell people to get away from looking at the small 1 minute, 5 minute charts and base their trading decisions off of something else. So micros, great for that. And then, obviously if you're new in the business, and you don't have a lot of money in your account and you can't post margin for a mini, you've got the micros. You can get your hands dirty, learn trading, learn exposure, learn risk with the micros. And then, every trader goes through rough patches where they're not making any money. When things aren't working, we always say pump the brakes a little bit, scale back, and they're a great tool to still, try and make directional interpretations in the market. But if things aren't working, you don't want to do that with big leverage. You want to do that with small leverage. So if I'm on a cold streak, I might revert to the micros just to try and stay in tune, keep working my strategy, but on a much smaller scale.
Well said. And that's,
Jack,
I think,
you are muted.
I think you touched on it though, Mick. There are some huge advantages to them. And I think at the end of the day, as a trader, everyone out there, if you're going to trade micros, you got to really think through, what's my strategy with these? It's not going to be the forever maybe. But how do I use these to control risk? How do I use these to hone in on some systems? And then like Mick said, when things go bad and you are struggling and we talk about scaling back, go put on 5 minis or micros as opposed to 1 mini. And then you're just cut your risk in half, at least per tick, not obviously your costs, but your per tick. You've just cut that down a little bit and you can sit through things a little bit longer as volatility changes, right? Our strategies can adjust. We get comfortable, with where our stops and our profit target is going to be. And as maybe volatility is lightening up and the markets get tighter, you're struggling to find that rhythm, or vice versa. You struggle to find that rhythm. You can bring it into the micro, utilize that product to then refine that strategy, and you can go back into your size that you were trading beforehand.
Yeah. You guys ever work with anyone that would conspicuously talk about their size in public places?
Never believed them.
Never believed them? Yeah, no, I knew one guy who loved to take the L home and be on the phone talking about selling X sell me 5 million 2-year basis or whatever else like that.
Yeah,
makes you feel
goofballs.
good.
Talking about the notional
Goofballs.
value of things.
Talking about that notional value, buying a 20-year-old BMW and hanging outside mothers, just stuff like that.
There was always the guy that was riding home on the L with his trading jacket with his badge hanging out. Always want to be a big shot.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I guess there's a thin line between confidence and madness. I mean, you need to be a confident trader, but also don't be a D-bag, so to speak. So
Yeah, it's more of an insecurity.
Oh,
Yep.
definitely. Well, there's so many chronically insecure people that work in trading because it's such an easy way to define, not an easy profession, but like it's very cut and dry how you can define your successes in it. So
Very
anyway,
true.
that's some trading psychology for the end there. Well, I think that's where we'll leave it today. Dan, do you have a quote for us?
I do. It's from a gentleman named Anonymous.
Ooh.
Before you invest in something, invest in time to understand it.
Yeah. Measure twice, cut once.
Wise
Those
words from
those are
Anonymous.
wise. Cool. Well,
Always
thanks.
Anonymous is always coming up with some good stuff.
Anonymous is great. I like this guy or gal.
Yeah. So everybody out there, thanks for listening to the Coach's Playbook this week. We got some stuff coming up at Top Step, back to school in September. Hoag's going to be teaching a couple classes. We're doing a little Tales from the Coach and redoing some trading strategies. So that'll be fun. And, keep an eye on your emails maybe this weekend. I'll leave it at that. So that's all we got for today. Hoag, you want to sign us off with some comparable to anonymous words of wisdom?
Of course, and this isn't even anonymous. This is somebody that has been putting quotes in the chat room for the market forecast, and today's was really good. I thought it's trading is both a science and art. We can never match someone else's art, but we can, with time and practice, develop our own art based on our understanding of the science. That's Unicus. He puts a quote a day in there, and it's wonderful. I love it. Thank you, Unicus, and thanks to all of you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Stay safe and trade well.